Hey guys, this is A Taste of Science, and today we're talking about thermodynamics.
Greetings, nerd. Welcome your stay. You got no brains in the zombie buffet. When you go out, you order your meat like full lane, which is only one of their real. Which comics are better, Marvel or DC? Do you prefer gaming on console or PC?
So like I said, today we're talking about thermodynamics. Thermo means heat, dynamic means change. So really, very simply put, we're talking about heating things up. So for today's episode, especially because it's the first one, I don't want to talk about food or about chemicals or any of that. I'm just talking about the actual kitchen setup, getting everything you need set up in order to cook. So we're going to be talking about the stovetop, and we're going to be talking about the oven. So first off, on the stovetop, really the big thing is, what do you have on top of it? I have two examples here because we don't have the third one in my household. But the first example I'm going to talk about is a cast iron pot. They're big, they're heavy. If you were planning to defend yourself with a pan against a zombie, that's what you want to crack its skull with. They're hefty. This is because cast iron is a really dense material. And because it's so dense, it heats up kind of slowly, but it retains that heat really, really well. And it can actually go to higher heats than it's safe to heat up something like stainless steel, which we'll talk about in a second, or something like a non-stick Teflon surface. The cast iron pots are great because if you drop something in it like a steak, for example, it's going to maintain its heat and it's going to start cooking that steak immediately. The other end of the spectrum is something like copper. It still heats up really quickly, but it's a lot lighter, it's not as dense, and so when you drop something like a cold steak on it, it immediately throws all the heat into the steak, and then it's going to heat up again. And so you've got this weird period where you really haven't been cooking the steak because you have to wait for the whole pan to heat up again. On the other hand, one of the advantages of a copper pot is the fact that it's not going to react with acids like you find in a lot of fruits and vegetables, things like tomatoes in particular, which is used in a lot of cooking. It's going to have some reactions with the metal in stainless steel or in cast iron, and you're not going to see that in copper. Copper is really expensive though. A lot of people don't have it in their houses. Like I said, I don't have a copper pot. These are two of the things though that you don't see as much of. What you do see a lot of is going to be one of these things, which is stainless steel. Stainless steel is really popular for a lot of reasons. The biggest one being it's in the middle between the two of them. It heats up pretty quickly. It spreads the heat very evenly, the way that copper pot does. If you've got like an open flame gas stove top, you're going to get that ring of flames, and you're going to get a ring of heat on a cast iron pot, because only where the fire is touching it is it going to heat up quickly, and spreading that heat out through the rest of the pan is going to take much longer, and things are going to cook a little bit unevenly on that. Stainless steel is a little better about that. It still has some troubles spreading heat around, but it's not as bad as the cast iron is. Which is one of the reasons it's become as popular as it has as far as a material to make pots and pans out of. The other thing that you'll see, all three of these, and this is why I've chosen to focus on these, they all work on what's called an induction cooktop. Instead of having an exposed heating coil or having those flames coming out on a gas stove, an induction cooked surface uses a coil of copper wire, and they run an alternating current through that copper wire, which creates not just a magnetic field, but it creates a rapidly alternating magnetic field, which creates magnetic flux. This in turn invigorates all the electrons in any of these, any ferromagnetic material, copper, cobalt, iron, and of course stainless steel has iron in it. And it's going to actually heat up the pot itself. But you can also at the same time put your hand right on top of the cooktop, induction cooktop. Not going to hurt your hand at all, I mean, unless the hot pot has been sitting on it. You can put paper on it, it's not going to burn. And they're becoming much more popular for that reason, but also because they're very energy efficient. Because all of the heat goes straight to the pot. None of it is lost to the air around it. It doesn't heat up the kitchen nearly as much. And you're not losing as much energy to the environment. So I got to reset the angle on my camera, but when I do, we're going to talk a little bit more about the oven, and in particular about calibrating your oven, because it's something a lot of people don't know how to do, or they think, oh, I'll put a thermometer in there, and that's going to do it, and that's not really the best way to do it. So I'll get back to you guys about that in a second. Alright guys, so one thing I wanted to tell you about real quick before I open up the oven and show you how I'm calibrating it. I also wanted to mention I have a pizza stone in there. They're not expensive. They're kind of a specialty piece, which a lot of times for a lot of different hobbies, that's something that can be very expensive, one of those specialty items. But it's actually fairly inexpensive. You can get them for 30, maybe 50 bucks. I always keep it in my oven, even if I'm not using it. Unless I need the second rack for something. And the big reason is it's a lot like the cast iron pot. It heats up and it holds that heat really, really well. If you're like me and you like to look inside all the time and you want to go, ooh, are the cookies ready? Ooh, are the cookies ready? You can, you're going to be letting all that hot air out every time you open up your oven. And so the pizza stone actually helps reheat the oven when you close it again, because it's got to reheat all the air inside, and having a second source of heat, the pizza stone, actually is going to make that happen a lot faster for you. If you have the money to spend on it, or even if you're lucky enough to have a pizza stone sitting around the house, I'd highly recommend you just throw it in there, and it's going to help with your cooking times if you're one of the people who likes to peek a lot like I am. So as far as calibrating your oven, as I mentioned earlier, you could put a cooking thermometer in there, but the problem is that how do you know the cooking thermometer is accurate? I mean, it's possible for those to go bad over time, for them to become less accurate. How do you know that the measurement you're getting is true? And the key to that is to use a physical property of a material in order to test that line. So for example, if we were testing something that was around 200 degrees, we would probably use water. Everyone knows from school water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius. And so it's really good for testing things at that temperature. But if you've ever cooked before, you know that most things you put in the oven are going to be at about 350 or 375 degrees. So what we use instead is sugar. Sugar melts at 367 degrees. So if you put a thing of sugar in there, like I have, and put it at 350, and let it sit. You can let it sit all day if you want to. It'll waste a lot of energy, but you can, and it will not melt. It will not melt. You might have some of it that burns and is going to create caramel, but that's not the same thing as melting. And I'm going to show you what these look like, so you're not going, okay, but how do I know which is which? So I've had this in here for about 20 minutes now, and I'm gonna just open it up, pull it out, and let you guys see. And you guys actually see, hopefully the pizza stone now at the bottom, so you guys can also see that I have that stuck in there. So if I open this up and I reach in to pull out my sugar, I actually don't have any that's caramelized, but it's white sugar. It's it's what you're used to seeing if you've just got a case of sugar at home that you use when cooking. It looks perfectly normal. There's nothing strange about it. It moves around perfectly normal. So I'm going to put it back in there. I'm going to give it about 5, maybe 10 minutes, but I'm going to put it at 375 degrees, and we're going to see what happens now. So I'm going to put this back, and I will be right with you guys. So I gave it about 10 minutes at a little bit higher than 375, because I know that my oven is actually a little bit colder than it's supposed to be. So we're going to check now and just see what it looks like after it started to melt. Just reach in here and grab this, and you can see here we've got sort of a browning around the edges, and if you start to move it around, you can actually see that it's a liquid sitting on top of the powder. It's more of a gel-like consistency because there is still powder there. It hasn't melted entirely, but you don't need it to melt completely in order to tell that it is in fact melting. if it were just burning, if it were just caramelizing, you'd get solid pieces that wouldn't be as bendy or flexible as what this is. I can't point with an oven on can I? But I hope that you guys found this interesting. I hope that if you guys enjoy cooking, you found this to be helpful as far as things you might need for setting up your kitchen and about calibrating an oven, which a lot of people don't know about doing. Um, I hope you guys are looking forward to seeing the next Taste of Science. Until then, please remember the kitchen's a laboratory, and I'll see you guys soon.